Good information design gives you a quick and effective overview of your business performance. The graphomate charts support you with meaningful and directly understandable diagrams according to the International Business Communication Standards, and this in the leading BI tools such as SAP Analytics Cloud, Power BI, Tableau, and MS 365. In this way, you can capture correlations, patterns, and outliers much better and more concretely than is possible with large tables or traffic lights. The graphomate charts offer you 6 different chart types for this purpose. In addition to the bar or column chart, line, needle, and stack charts are available, as well as bars with integrated deviations and waterfall charts for profit and loss or contribution margin calculations. All types can be easily supplemented with deviation charts, for example for plan and actual deviations. Scenarios, highlights, and comparison groups also contribute significantly to the comprehensibility and comparability of the visualized data. Together with the graphomate matrix and graphomate bubbles, you can implement all IBCS requirements easily and exhaustively. In the following, I will introduce various chart types and show how to link them to data sources and work with them. In doing so, I will remain as comprehensive but practical as possible and will not explain every function of the charts down to the last detail. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask me in the comments or visit our website and use the manuals available for our tools, or ask for a personal demonstration. The installation. We will now carry out the installation for the SAC environment as an example. If you have not yet installed the component, proceed as follows. Open the SAC web interface, navigate to the menu item Analytical Applications. Here, click on the Custom Widgets tab. Now you can add the desired component using the small plus icon. It is now available in the Custom Widgets dropdown. Now let's create a new story and add the graphomate charts to the canvas. In the header, we find the Custom Widgets category under Insert Add. There, we now select the graphomate charts. Once we have placed the component, we need to connect a data source. The dialog for this opens automatically. Here we can select any data source included in the SAC. If we want to connect a different data source later, we can do this via the database icon in the top right-hand corner of the Builder panel. To display data in the charts, we still need to select specific measures and dimensions. We can also use the series dimension, for example, to break down our measures by actual and budget values, which are defined in the version dimension in our model. This saves space and allows a more direct visual comparison of the values. If we now only want to display certain members from the various dimensions, this can be done using the filter. Once the data has been selected, we choose a chart type. To access the chart settings, click on the small gear icon in the Overlay UI. This opens the GPS. Let's start with a simple type, the bar chart. The chart can be changed to a different type at any time. All settings are retained. The selection is at the top of the Start tab. Of course, some chart types only really make sense with certain data. When aligning the chart, it is generally advisable to visualize data that represents a temporal progression with a horizontal category axis, while it is better to use a vertical display for ranking comparisons. You can always switch between these two modes using the Rotate button in the Overlay UI. I would like to give the chart a title to tell the recipients at first glance which data they are looking at. To do this, we use the search field in our settings dialog, the graphomate property sheet. Now that we have assigned a title, I would like to customize it a little. To make parts of the title bold, we use HTML tags within the input field. If we want to sort our data in a ranking order, we can use the N+Rest function. We find this in the Data tab and activate it by clicking on the checkbox. Clicking on the element itself opens the dialog. Here we first define which dimension the function should affect. Then we can influence whether we want to show the top or bottom elements of our data series and how many of them. Once all the desired data has been visualized in the component, we can take care of styling the chart. There are several options available to us in the series dialog box. First of all, I would like to mention that the series names are numbered consecutively by default. This has technical reasons. However, you can customize these names. To do this, simply enter the desired name in the label field. You can scroll through the series using the previous and next buttons. The most important function is the scenario assignment. Here you can change the style of the selected series to a predefined form that can be exchanged with other users. You can also influence the styling with the series styles, but these settings only ever relate to the current chart component. Of course, this may also be desirable. Once you have selected a scenario, the appearance can no longer be changed via the Series Styles tab. To do this, the scenario must first be set to none again. To adjust the selected scenario style, click the Edit Scenario button, which opens the dialog box. Here we can assign a name to the scenario. The color picker can be used to set the color of the scenario. The fill type provides various IBCS compliant fills. If a pin chart is selected, the shape of the pinhead can be changed using Shape. Width gives us the option of adjusting the width of the bar for this series as a percentage or to the exact pixel. Font weight can be used to vary the labeling for this scenario between normal and bold. The next point, chart type, allows us to select an individual type for this series. This allows you to create charts that combine different chart types. Compared to the SAC, you have a free choice of types here. With the series offset value, we move the position of a series on the category axis to the right or down, depending on the chart orientation. With negative values, the elements can also be moved in the opposite direction. In the scenario definition area, you can see the various predefined scenarios and edit them. An important point here, however, is the import-export field. If you only want to make the scenarios you have created available to other people in your organization, simply copy the code from the text field and pass it on. In the scenario assignment field, you now have the option of assigning specific scenarios to individual elements in the chart. This assignment overrides the previously selected scenarios for the series. The Scenario Legend checkbox displays a legend in the top left-hand corner of the chart. Small multiples. If we would like to split a chart into individual members of a dimension, we use the small multiples function. Here on the split dimension, I can select the dimension which will be used to split the data. We can use nCount to define how many small multiples are going to be displayed. The remaining members are summarized again as a remainder. The small multiples are also sorted by ranking. Now that we have understood the basics of the charts, I would like to briefly outline a few of the less complex settings. Let's start with the Emphasis tab. Here it is possible to display reference lines in our chart and set various highlights. To do this, we have to click in the Configurations field in the reference line area. This creates an object which we can configure more precisely by clicking on the object itself. We can give the line a label and decide what type of reference line it should be, whether threshold value, linear regression, mean value or average. We can then influence the appearance of the line. The highlights are a feature which we implemented in a very special way. We can choose between single, multi and both highlight types simultaneously. With just a few clicks, we can draw the attention to the most important information within our chart. The highlights help you to set the focus within a complex chart or dashboard. Let's now switch to the Axis tab. There we can influence the element offset in the Categories area. This allows us, for example, to move overlapping elements closer together and thus save space. A fixed width for the bars can also be defined here, as well as the number of categories theoretically displayed. This allows space to be reserved for dynamically changing categories. The value axis and separators can be used to add further visual elements to the chart to put the data in context. Let's jump to the Scaling tab, where we find the Outliers. This is an important function for making charts with very large individual values easier to read. We can define a threshold value for outliers and adjust their display. We have the choice between short and long outlier arrows and use size to change the size of the arrowheads. As an example, I will insert a threshold of 5 million. This visualizes the value of Matt Johnson as an outlier. Now let's take a look at deviations. To define a deviation, we need to create a configuration in the Start tab under Deviations or activate one of the existing ones. To create one, click on the small plus icon above the configuration line. A deviation from Series 1 to Series 2 is now automatically displayed. We can configure the deviation more precisely. To do this, we click on the line. The dialog box then opens. Here we can give the deviation a label, set whether it should display absolute or percentage values, and which data series it is based on. Several deviations can be created and displayed in one chart simultaneously. If you have a null value in your data series, this is usually ignored for the deviation calculation. But if you check the Calculate Deviations from Null checkbox, it will be included. In the good color, bad color and neutral color fields, you can freely assign the respective colors. With the checkbox Negative deviation is good, the evaluation of the deviation can be reversed with one click. The bar width of the deviation bars can be set in the next field. However, this is only possible if Scenarios and Deviations is checked in the Data tab. If a percentage deviation is displayed, it is automatically visualized as a pin chart. The line width can be set in the Deviation Pin Width field. Most options are self-explanatory. Pin line black sets the pin color to black. With Use Pinhead Color, I can give the pinhead its own color and set its shape via the pinhead shape. Let us now turn our attention to the so-called value formats. There, we can influence the way in which values are formatted in our chart. We can find these settings at the top of the Labels tab. Here, we can configure the formatting of absolute and percentage values. Let's click on the absolute object to open the dialog. First, there is the Locale dropdown, which allows us to customize number representations according to the 3 most common formats with a single click. The US option separates the decimal place with a point and the thousands with a comma. The FR option separates the decimal place with a comma and the thousands with a space. The last option is DE, where the decimal place is also separated by a comma, but the thousands are separated by a period. In addition, millions, trillions and so on are abbreviated differently in Germany. We can use Format Type to set the type of numbers to be displayed. We can choose between real numbers, percentage values, ordinal data and time values. Abbreviations determines the basis on which the numbers in the chart are abbreviated. If you are unable to implement your desired formatting with these presets, we offer you further individual customization options. In the field thousand separator, you can specify exactly how this separation should be displayed. The decimal separator does the same for separation of decimal places. With the total digits option, we can influence how many digits in total are displayed. These are provided with meaningful abbreviations accordingly, so that the display remains correct in terms of content. Decimal digits allows us to adjust the decimal places more precisely. With the scaling factor, the original values from the data source can be multiplied by any number. This is most frequently used to convert percentages into decimal values. With prefix and suffix, we can append any string before or after the data. Zero format lets us define what is displayed if there is a zero in the source. This should not be confused with the null format function. Here you can define what is displayed for empty data. In the infinity format field, we define how the results of undefined or incorrect arithmetic calculations are visualized. The way in which the chart rounds the data can be set in the rounding method dropdown. The half up method rounds up from a 0.5 value. In the case of negative figures, this means that minus 23.5 is rounded up to minus 23. Commercial, on the other hand, rounds up to minus 24 in this case. The trim method simply trims the decimal place. The negative sign dropdown allows you to influence the way negative values are displayed. Either a minus sign is displayed, the data is parenthesized, or it is presented as absolute values without any sign. We can use the explicit positive sign checkbox to force a plus sign for positive values. Finally, you can assign a name for this formatting. We have now supplied the chart with data, used various options for visualization and adjusted the displayed values. But what happens if we have several charts on a dashboard and want to be able to compare the displayed values with each other? This is where the comparison group comes in handy. You can find this in the Scaling tab under the second item, Synchronize. Enter a name of your choice and select which aspects are to be included in the synchronization. As soon as you select a second chart and enter the same name, the charts are synchronized with each other. If I now scale one chart, the bars in the other chart automatically scale accordingly. This works across the entire dashboard. The baselines of adjacent charts are also brought to the same level. Now I would like to take a closer look at our waterfall chart. All settings for this can be found in the Chart Specific tab. We can use the calculation path to define which section of the waterfall describes which data. I will now show this using a contribution margin calculation. I have added the corresponding key figures and dimensions from our model. Please pay attention to the correct order of the data here. In the calculation path, I select the data corresponding to the element using the drop-down boxes. The revenue is therefore a sum, material costs and shipping costs are deducted from it. This results in the contribution margin 1, which is again a sum. The fixed costs again are deducted from this to arrive at contribution margin 2. Finally, we deduct the taxes. This results in our profit. As we can see, this creates a sensible waterfall with subtotals. The colors of the various element types can be freely defined. Once we have configured our chart to the recipient's needs, it may be useful to share these settings with other report creators in the company. We can use the template function for this. It can be found in the Input-Output tab. We have to give the template a name and save it. Now we can download a file via export, which we then distribute. The import even works across different BI platforms. An even more convenient way is to use the graphomate server, a small Docker component. With this, everyone in the company can access our template immediately. All settings made in the GPS are stored in it. The data connection is excluded. If we need to design some elements in our chart beyond the possibilities of the GPS, we can use CSS. The field for inserting the script can be found in the Labels tab under Custom CSS. Here we can again create several objects in order to be able to use different scripts individually. As an example, I wrote a small script which gives the bar a red border when hovering over it. This concludes our video manual. If you have any further questions, please ask me in the comments or ask for a live presentation with us at graphomate.com.